Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. As regular viewers know, China's stock market surged in the lead up to the National Day holiday, which ended yesterday on Monday, in response to strong signals from Beijing that stimulus is on the way. We've done a deep dive into the fiscal and monetary promises made by the state in previous episodes, so there's no need to re-examine that here. Check those out for those who want a primer on the background to this historic rally. Goldman Sachs has upgraded its expectations for Chinese stocks, telling investors that shares could go up a further 15 to 20% higher. Strategists at the US investment bank said the measures announced so far by Chinese authorities, quote, constitute a more substantial policy stimulus that contrasts with the sporadic and modest easing measures over the past few years, end quote. Mainland Chinese markets have been closed since last Tuesday. However, investors pointed to the 11% rise over the 5 days of Hong Kong's Hang Seng China Enterprises Index, which comprises mainland companies listed in the territory, as a sign that Chinese markets would open higher on Tuesday. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index was up 37% this year as of yesterday, Monday, more than the S&P 500. Brokerages worked overtime during the week-long National Day holiday, which ended yesterday, to onboard new accounts. Banks also started allowing cash transfers to brokerage accounts earlier than usual on Tuesday morning. State-run Securities Times newspaper reported on Sunday that during the week-long holidays, quote, reservations to open new stock accounts surged by about 150% month-on-month, mostly from the post-1980s and post-1990s generations, end quote. Meanwhile, inflows to US-listed emerging market ETFs that invest across developing nations, as well as those that target specific countries, totaled $5.96 billion in the week ending October 4th, the biggest weekly inflow in over a year. 5 leading ETFs that invest in Chinese stocks received about $4.9 billion in cash, the most on record. Interestingly, Chinese semiconductor stocks have seen the best gains during pre-holiday trading. Shares of Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corp, SMIC, China's largest contract chip maker, put on 20% in Hong Kong on Monday after surging 29% on Friday. Their gains over the past 2 sessions added almost 100 billion Hong Kong dollars, the equivalent of $12.06 billion to its market capitalization. Its smaller peer, Hua Hong Semiconductor, has gained over 40% since Thursday's close. So, expectations were high that PRC stocks would reopen today, Tuesday, with continued upward momentum. Well, yes and no. The CSI 300, China Securities Index 300, was up about 6% as of lunchtime, down from its 10% opening. The rally in Chinese markets lost steam after a briefing from the country's National Development and Reform Commission provided few details on further stimulus. And we remember that this original rally was largely in part triggered by promises of large stimulus from Beijing's supreme decision-making body, the Politburo, but without providing any details. The chairman of the National Development and Reform Commission, in a morning press briefing, pledged a raft of actions to bolster the country's economy, expressing that China is, quote, fully confident, end quote, of achieving its full-year economic and social development targets. But he stopped short of announcing any new major stimulus plans, underwhelming investors and weakening the rally in the mainland Chinese markets. In Hong Kong, things were much worse. Very tellingly, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index plummeted over 10% after the NDRC meeting, before recovering slightly to a smaller loss of 6.4%. Ding Shuang, chief economist for Greater China and North Asia at Standard Chartered Bank in Hong Kong, draws a correlation between the Hong Kong stock market drop and the NDRC event, expressing, quote, it looks very much related. The only driver for stocks is today's NDRC event. Market expectations were high. The stock market especially had high expectations. But this is the NDRC, not the Ministry of Finance. Even though they didn't announce fiscal stimulus today, that doesn't mean there won't be fiscal stimulus. End quote. Now, I would be interested to know what you think. Is Goldman Sachs correct, predicting a 15 to 20% increase of the CSI 300, that is China's main stocks? Or is fiscal stimulus going to ultimately disappoint the market, resulting in stock prices plunging once again? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Next up, we look now at some preliminary data for the National Day holidays, which have just concluded. On Monday, yesterday, the last day of the week-long National Day holidays, cross-regional passenger trips reached more than 278.76 million, up 5.2% from the number during the same period in 2023, according to official data released by the Ministry of Transport. Notably, the number represented a 24.8% increase from that of the same period in 2019, before the COVID-19 pandemic. In terms of mode of transportation, China's railway network saw more than 18.52 million trips, up 8.6% year-on-year and 26.6% from 2019, according to the Ministry of Transport. These early trends could indicate China's middle class may be more willing to loosen their purse strings than previously thought. Amid slowing growth and a property downturn, domestic demand has remained poor for much of the year. Retail sales rose only 2.1% in August, missing analyst forecasts of 2.5%. In addition, some have noticed a disconnect between the numbers from Monday, suggesting that consumption may be cautiously returning, and anecdotal situations on the ground. Hong Kong-based The South China Morning Post, for example, writes in a piece published today, quote, "Over the summer and mid-autumn festival peak travel seasons, China's major cities buzzed with tourists, with travel data painting a picture of a vibrant recovery. However, the reality for many in the tourism industry tells a different story, with operators lamenting the peak seasons as the worst ever, and some struggling businesses faring worse than during the darkest days of the coronavirus pandemic. Travel agents from across China share the same disappointed sentiment, with businesses during China's ongoing 7-day Golden Week National Day holiday, which this year started on Tuesday, traditionally filled bustling with crowds, vibrant peaks of activity, and overflowing coffers. The stark contrast highlights a profound crisis lurking beneath the surface of apparent prosperity, marked by China's weak consumer spending, as many travelers remain reluctant to open their wallets amid broader economic anxieties. On paper, though, China's travel data paints a more optimistic picture. Total tourist spending also stood at 51 billion yuan, $7.26 billion, representing an 8% increase compared to 2019. Tourism industry professionals never look at the statistics because we wouldn't be able to understand them, a COO of a Chinese travel agency focused on high-end travel told us. The more you look at it, the more foolish you feel about yourself. End quote. Next up, we move to tensions around Taiwan. But just quickly, if you're getting some value from today's episode, I have one big favor to ask. That is just to click the like button, and if you see yourself watching another episode of China Update in the future, maybe consider subscribing. This is just 2 clicks of the mouse, but it's a tremendous help for me and the channel. Thank you so much. The second so-called joint sword operations may be coming soon. We remember back in May, Beijing engaged in some of their biggest military drills around Taiwan in response to Taiwan President William Lai Ching-te's inauguration speech. Lai will give a speech on the 10th of October, this Thursday, for the Republic of China's National Day. Veteran China analyst Bill Bishop observed on this point today, quote, "Depending on how much he hurts the feelings in Beijing, we should not be surprised to see a sequel to the Joint Sword military exercises." The PLA named those drills Joint Sword 2024A, leading to much speculation that if there is an A, then there will likely be a B this year. And with less than 3 months left in 2024, and Lai continuing to say things that upset Beijing, including this past weekend, when he said that because the ROC is older than the PRC, the 10-10 speech may be just the pretext needed for Part B of the drills. And if there is a B, how might stock market investors, especially foreign ones, react? End quote. The speech which he was referring to was made a few days ago at a concert where Lai expressed, quote, "Therefore, in terms of age, it is absolutely impossible for the People's Republic of China to become the motherland of the Republic of China's people. On the contrary, the Republic of China may be the motherland of the people of the People's Republic of China, who are over 75 years old. One of the most important meanings of these celebrations is that we must remember that we are a sovereign and independent country." End quote. UK-based Reuters, citing unnamed Taiwan officials, also reports that China, quote, "is likely to launch military drills this week near Taiwan, using Taiwan President Lai Ching-te's upcoming National Day speech as a pretext to pressure the island to accept its sovereignty claims. end quote, with one senior official reportedly warning, quote, "Our assessment is that no matter what Lai says on October 10th, they might put a name on existing exercises and call it Joint Sword 2024B. That's a possibility." End quote. Now, to end today's video, we will examine a piece published by The Economist this week called "China is using an anaconda strategy to squeeze Taiwan," which we are now quoting selected excerpts from directly. China's dislike of Taiwan's president Lai Ching-te is no secret. Chinese authorities call him a stubborn, confrontational separatist who may provoke a war in the Taiwan Strait. But since Mr. Lai's election in May, it is China's People's Liberation Army that has been raising the chances of conflict by deploying more air and naval craft around Taiwan. The PLA is using an anaconda strategy to squeeze the island, says Admiral Tang Hua, Taiwan's Navy commander. In an interview with The Economist, Tang warns that Chinese forces are slowly but surely increasing their presence around his country. "They are ready to blockade Taiwan at any time they want," he says. His concerns are backed up by the data. The number of PLA air incursions across the median line, the de facto border in the middle of the Taiwan Strait, has jumped more than fivefold, from 36 in January to 163 in August. The number of PLA ships operating around Taiwan has steadily risen too, doubling from 142 in January to 282 in August. These vessels are also coming closer to Taiwan, right along its contiguous zone, or 24 nautical miles from the coast, and they are patrolling for a few days at a time, up from a few hours previously, according to Taiwan's naval commander. These are relatively new developments. Until August 2022, the PLA had operated mostly in Taiwan's south and west. Now the PLA has normalized patrols and regularly encircles the island by sea and air. It has also increased the number of Navy transits through the Yonaguni Channel between Taiwan and Japan. The PLA's increased patrols are straining Taiwan's Navy. China has twice as many frigates and 10 times as many destroyers. Taiwan often has to deploy 25 to 50% of its combat vessels just to match China's patrols. As the PLA Navy presses closer to the island, Taiwan is focused on avoiding confrontation. The PLA is trying to force Taiwan to make mistakes, says Tang, and looking for excuses to trigger a blockade. That is why Taiwan's military leaders issued new rules of engagement this year that define ethical and legal use of force in self-defense. "We restrain our guys not to provoke or escalate," said Tang. Even as Taiwan's armed forces practice restraint, its leaders are working with allies on how to keep sea lines of communication open in case of blockade. Taiwan is also seeking international help to resist Chinese pressure. Japan's Navy conducted a transit exercise through the Taiwan Strait for the first time in September, as did naval ships from Australia, New Zealand and Germany. America's Navy sails through it several times a year. The exercises send a signal to China that the strait is international territory. The Chinese authorities protest, but they show no sign of loosening the anaconda's squeeze. Here ends the direct quote and today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a good Tuesday, and I will see you all tomorrow.